Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 21st. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Wanunu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. And sometimes, Jill, when you're at the Democratic Convention in Chicago, you run into people you would never expect. As I was coming to tape this, I ran into the two high school government teachers who most inspired me to go to school in Washington and get interested in government. I was already interested in government, but really reinforced that interest. Dan Larson, Andrew Kaneen, both were Stevenson High School teachers. Dan, as I told him, I can now call him because I'm in my 40s at this point. I can call my high school teacher Dan. Mr. Larson is retired, but Kaneen still teaches. And it was super cool because I remember when I was in high school, we were talking about the 2000 conventions, and 24 years later, I run into them now doing what I'm doing, saying, you guys helped inspire me to do this. Have
they followed your career at all? Do they follow Mo News?
They do. They're heavily involved. They often go to Washington for AP prep. They do appearances on C-SPAN once in a while. So I've stayed in touch with them through the years, but still very cool to see them at a forum like this.
And I'm sure for them, incredibly rewarding when they hear from students like you how much they influenced your life.
Totally. I still recall their classes fondly. They found a fun way to teach American government, comparative government. And it's funny, I still recall us talking about this new leader of Russia named Vladimir Putin. He had just come to power 25 years ago. And I reminded them of that. I was like, I was your first semester when Putin was in power. And the only thing that's still the same after all these years, Vladimir Putin's still in power.
It is funny, though, that you call them by their first names, because I have run into a few teachers, especially because I moved kind of back home, and I still call them Mrs. So-and-so. I actually don't even know some of their first names.
In fact, Larson's like, you call me by my first name? I'm like, man, I'm 42 now. Am I entitled yet? Let me know when I can stop calling you Mr. Larson.
All right, well, that is a great run-in, and let's get to the headlines. Speaking of the Democratic National Convention, it is night 2 of the DNC, and that brought the Obamas to the stage, and also I guess you could call it the reintroduction of Doug Emhoff.
Among the other highlights from last night.
Staying with politics, RFK Jr.'s presidential campaign now considering ending its independent bid and endorsing former President Trump.
The latest in the long winding tale of the Kennedy for President campaign.
To the Middle East, Israel recovers the bodies of 6 hostages from Gaza. And the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, continues his push for a ceasefire deal. Back at home, Connecticut and New York have a very long recovery from heavy rain over the past weekend.
And as you're discovering, questions about their infrastructure moving forward.
Illinois banning corporal punishment in schools, saying that hitting is never allowed.
We'll have a look at the state of corporal punishment in America. You might be surprised on where the U.S. stands versus the rest of the world on this practice.
What we know about President Biden's secret nuclear strategy, and some hope for people suffering from diabetes. Plus, Moshe is on this day in history.
Jill, your clue today. I carried a watermelon.
Moshe, challenge us, please.
I mean, listen. Those who know, and those who don't know definitely don't know, right?
I guess if there's anyone listening who doesn't know, then my apologies.
Jill's like, the most obvious clue in the world, Moshe.
Okay, Moshe, let's start with politics. Today begins day 3 of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. On Tuesday, the convention held its roll call, officially making Kamala Harris the nominee, which is pretty much just symbolic, especially this year, because the delegates have already cast their votes for the vice president to be the party's nominee. And after Monday night ran very late with President Biden not taking the stage until well after prime time.
11:30 on the East Coast, Jill. Was anyone awake?
I was not. But the DNC is trying to shorten the program. Officials are asking speakers to actually trim their speeches and adhere to time limits, which is not easy, Moshe, especially for politicians.
Not especially for politicians. People are asking, like, what's going on over there? I go, have you ever attended a wedding or organized a wedding? Try to get all your speeches shorter. Convince everyone to, deliver shorter remarks so you can make better use of that expensive band at your wedding and get more dancing in. In fact, speaking of the music, the speeches went so long on Monday, Jill, they killed a live performance from James Taylor that was set to be a tribute. You've Got a Friend in Me to Joe Biden. Everything was running so late. They said, sorry, baby James, no performance for you.
Are they going to try and reschedule it? That's so disappointing for him and for everyone.
It was. We saw him practicing earlier in the afternoon on Monday, and we were excited for this. We're like, did I miss James Taylor? You're like, no, they cut him from the program. Rest assured, we'll find out if they're going to bring Taylor back.
All right. Well, the highlight on Tuesday, former President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama, who wanted to look ahead to a new generation for Democrats and their leadership.
Jill, the theme here has very much been generational handoff these past two nights. Monday, it was 81-year-old Joe Biden and 76-year-old Hillary Clinton talking about the next generation, handing things off. The same thing on Tuesday with slightly younger Obamas, but still talking about a generational handoff here. The former president, the best living Democratic orator, Barack Obama, he had a tall task ahead of him, help package Kamala Harris with the successes of Joe Biden, but also differentiate her as the next generation and try to give her some of the 2008 hope and change mojo, juju, if you will. So both Obamas last night really took it to Trump, rousing the crowd. I actually will argue, and I think many other commentators said this, Michelle Obama's speech was the speech of the night. She had the arena rocking, standing ovations. It was a speech of her life. And so we'll say that the Michelle Obama speech, probably one of the most memorable in recent convention history. And she probably outdid her former president husband last night. So let's start with a bit of Michelle Obama here, making the case for Harris in contrast for Trump.
Kamala has shown her allegiance to this nation, not by spewing anger and bitterness, but by living a life of service and always pushing the doors of opportunity open to others. She understands that most of us will never be afforded the grace of failing forward. We will never benefit from the affirmative action of generational wealth. If we bankrupt a business or choke in a crisis, we don't get a second, third, or fourth chance. If things don't go our way, we don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No. We don't get to change the rules so we always win. If we see a mountain in front of us, we don't expect there to be an escalator waiting to take us to the top.
So a clear contrast with Trump there, references to failing forward, the affirmative action of generational wealth, escalators to get you to the next place when you choke on something, all very clear references to the former president. Again, she had the United Center, tens of thousands of people in there, really hanging on every single line. And there were a number of them, but I will say there is one that'll probably be the most remembered one from this DNC. Obviously, 2 more days to go here. But she began by mocking Trump's recent references to what he's called black jobs, without really explaining what he meant. He did it in the presidential debate with Biden, did it again when he spoke at a Black Journalist Conference. Trump has been saying that illegal migrants are taking black jobs, and everyone keeps asking him, what do you mean by black jobs? Well, here's how Michelle Obama replied last night.
We know what comes next. We know folks are going to do everything they can to distort her truth. My husband and I sadly know a little something about this. For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of 2 hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
A former colleague of mine, Adriana Diaz, at CBS News, had a vantage point through the door from one of the podiums where the media was sitting to be able to watch Barack Obama as he was watching backstage on a screen Michelle's speech, applauding, laughing, and he very much enjoyed that last line. Then it was his turn, Barack Obama taking the stage immediately after her, joking that he's the only person dumb enough to try to follow Michelle Obama. And really, he was right. His speech, listen, he's still one of the most gifted orators in modern American history, still strong, didn't quite get the reactions that she was getting. The two overall followed the same theme. They were trying to reach the hardcore Democrats, the base, as well as swing voters, many of whom voted for him. And not only in 2008, but in 2012, he won by overwhelming margins. So the message to the base from Obama last night, listen, this is a party. This is all well and good, but you need to get to work. These next 70 or so days are not going to be easy if you actually want to win this election. Then he also made the case to swing voters. Again, he was really taking it to Trump last night, saying at one point, we don't need 4 more years of what he called bluster and bumbling and chaos, making the following metaphor, Obama saying, we have seen this movie before, and we all know that the sequel is usually worse. And then the former president really tried to punch Trump where it hurts. Here's a bit more here on probably the most memorable line from Barack Obama last night. You can note in this line, there's laughter when Obama's talking about crowd sizes. While he's talking about Trump's obsession with crowd sizes, Obama's using his hands to gesture back and forth, intimating that Trump's obsession with crowd sizes might be reflective of Trump's obsession with the size of something else. I'll leave it there. Here's the bite.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. The other day I heard someone compare Trump to the neighbor who keeps running his leaf blower outside your window every minute of every day. Now, from a neighbor, that's exhausting. From a president, it's just dangerous.
Again, the crowd size comment, clearly a rated R joke there, but one that is sure to irk Trump if he hasn't already posted on Truth Social by the time you listen to this in the morning. I imagine he will very soon. Both Obamas also thanked Joe Biden. Obviously, Joe Biden was Obama's vice president. At the same time, though, the Obamas were involved in the effort to get Biden to withdraw, to make Kamala Harris the nominee. Apparently, there is still bad blood right now from Joe Biden for his former boss, President Obama. Nonetheless, they thanked Biden for his accomplishments. But the larger message last night from the two of them was calling on the nation to reject Trump, his politics of grievance and division. And so that's where things stand at the halfway point of this convention. It will continue tonight with another former President Bill Clinton will be speaking, along with the keynote tonight, which is the vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz. But we're not done yet.
Also in Tuesday's lineup, Harris's husband, second gentleman Doug Emhoff, who's definitely not as familiar to mainstream audiences. So for him, you could call it somewhat of an introduction to America.
Yeah, it was goofy at times, cute at times. Emhoff went through how they initially met, how they were introduced, how they began dating, and then he tried to connect it back to the professional, the Kamala Harris that he knows personally, and how that reflects who she is as vice president and who he knows she will be as president. Here's a bit of what Emhoff had to say.
As I got to know her better and just fell in love fast, I learned what drives Kamala. And it's what you've seen over these past 4 years, and especially these past 4 weeks. She finds joy in pursuing justice. She stands up to bullies just like my parents taught me to. And she likes to see people do well, but hates when they're treated unfairly. She believes this work requires a basic curiosity in just how people are doing. Her empathy is her strength.
Jill, one thing in talking to delegates here that I'm finding out is they are super charged. They were super giddy, super excited about Kamala Harris. In fact, some of the excitement on Monday night about Joe Biden's speech was really a tribute to Biden, a thank you for stepping aside. He got a several-minute standing ovation before he spoke on Monday night. But at the same time, there's a reality check here in Chicago right now among these activists. They heard it from Hillary Clinton on Monday, that they actually have to work for it, that it's not just about excitement. They shouldn't believe any polls. They have to work minute by minute until Election Day. Clinton reinforcing this idea that they need to finally break through that glass ceiling for a woman president, that she talked on Monday night about having a vision of seeing Kamala Harris on that other side of the glass ceiling. And there's some reporting from our good friends at Puck. Peter Hamby with Puck spoke with the Wisconsin Democratic Party chair, one of the person who really can crunch the numbers here, especially in a state like Wisconsin. And he said that conventions are just the starting line. Another DNC member that Puck spoke to said they're much more focused and ready to work than they were in 2016, that they have the same level of excitement and momentum, but ultimately right now they are hearing from more volunteers and know that they can't take anything for granted. Puck has several reporters here. You'll be seeing some of their reporting on our Instagram thread. Puck, if you're not familiar with them, is a platform with multiple smart newsletters covering everything from politics to Wall Street to Silicon Valley. I know a number of reporters there. They often have the scoop, the deeper dive, once you've gotten the headlines from us. So consider taking a look at Puck News, subscribing to their newsletter. We have a special deal right now. If you head over to puck.news/MoNews, you get 20% off your first year with that code. And with that, there are newsletters that really give you the inside story on what's happening in a number of these sectors. Again, the website, puck.news/MoNews.
And staying with politics, some news from the RFK Jr. campaign. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s presidential campaign is now openly considering ending its independent bid for the White House to back former President Trump. Kennedy's running mate, Nicole Shanahan, spoke out about their debate in an interview published yesterday. Shanahan telling the business podcast Impact Theory that the Kennedy campaign is weighing whether or not to stay in the 2024 race if it means that their independent campaign could actually cost Trump the election. Take a listen.
You know, there's two options that we're looking at, and one is staying in, forming that new party, but we run the risk of a Kamala Harris and Waltz presidency because we draw votes from Trump, or we draw somehow more votes from Trump, or we walk away right now and join forces with Donald Trump, and you know, we walk away from that and we explain to our base why we're making this decision. Not easy.
Clearly.
Yeah, not an easy decision.
Jill, while we don't find this totally shocking, it is a bit surprising on how blatant it is at this juncture in the campaign. Keep in mind, Shanahan herself, a lifelong liberal, a major former donor to the Democratic Party before joining the Kennedy campaign very recently. And now she's talking about a Trump endorsement, which is fascinating given the politics here. You know, in the Venn diagram of Kennedy's issues, there's some that he overlaps with Dems on in terms of the environment and being pro-choice. And there's some issues, vaccine skepticism and free speech online, etc., where he very much overlaps with the Trump folks. And recent polling right now has shown a major drop for Kennedy. You know, he was hanging out at 10, 12% in the spring when America was facing the prospect of a Trump-Biden election. And it appears there were a lot of disenchanted Democrats parked in Kennedy's camp until Harris comes aboard, and they all decide to leave Kennedy and go to Harris. So she's picked up a bunch of them. He's now hanging out at 3 or 4% in the polls. Most of those people, they view as potential Trump people here. So why is Trump significant? Well, Trump has given Kennedy the time of day. They have spoken several times. He's made public calls, Trump has, for Kennedy to endorse him, saying, you know, potentially I'd consider you for various jobs in a Trump White House. And so it appears here very openly, the Kennedy campaign is saying, I don't know if we should stay in this race and help Harris win. Speaking very negatively about a Harris win and a Trump loss. And at the same time, there is a consideration, if they're a serious third party, that they should work towards staying in the race, hitting 5%. 5% is very key, because if they can hit 5% this year, that means their third party stays permanently on the ballot in all these states they fought to get on the ballot on. They don't have to work towards that again in 2028. The question is, do Kennedy and Shanahan even care? Are they even campaigning? The answer right now is pretty much no. They're not out there. They don't have real fundraising apparatus right now. She's a multimillionaire. She's the main source of money for the campaign. So that'll be something to watch here, because at the same time, 3 out of 4 Americans want a legit third party. But it appears here Kennedy and Shanahan they're considering not being that third party for potential jobs here for Trump. And they have a lot of leverage with Trump, because in a number of these states, you know, the difference might be 10,000 votes, like it was in Georgia, Arizona, et cetera, in 2020. Well, that's something Kennedy could achieve in these states if he's on the ballot. So that's why right now, I think increasingly one of the things to look at, as it remains very close and in anyone's race, is what does Trump offer to Kennedy to get him out of the race?
It is a fascinating twist. And also there are other third-party candidates. You've got Cornel West, who, while not as popular as RFK Jr., as you point out, Moshe, these races in some cases are decided by just a few thousand votes. So it doesn't take much to play a spoiler.
Yeah, so Cornel West, Jill Stein are the two names to look out for on the far left side. They could be taking votes from Harris, whereas Kennedy is mainly taking votes from Trump. West, look out for him potentially in Georgia, where he's trying to get on the ballot. He's failed in several other states. Jill Stein, on the other hand, on the ballot in Arizona, on the ballot in North Carolina, on the ballot in Wisconsin and Michigan. And that's where, especially Michigan, she can take votes from progressives, the far left, from Harris. She could spell doom for Harris in one of those states.
Time now for the speed read from NBC News. Israeli forces recovered the bodies of 6 Israeli hostages from southern Gaza in an overnight operation. This is according to the Israeli military. 5 of the 6 were previously known to have lost their lives. Of the roughly 250 people that Israel says were taken hostage during the Hamas October 7th attack, Israeli forces have so far rescued only 7 hostages alive. Others, mostly women and children, were returned to Israel during a week-long ceasefire last November. 109 captives still remain in Gaza, at least 30 of whom are believed to be dead. Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, saying that 6 bodies had been retrieved from Hamas tunnels beneath the city of Han Yunis in a complex operation. It isn't conclusive how they died.
There is an initial Israeli army assessment that 5 of these 6 kidnapped men died of suffocation during an IDF raid, actually 6 months ago, near the tunnel. That bombing caused fire and smoke to fill the tunnel. The bodies of the Hamas guards, still with their guns, were also found in their place. So they're investigating that right now on how that took place and potential failed intelligence that an operation was happening near where these hostages were. There is also concern among some people in Israel that they had a chance to bring out old men in the fall. At the time, Hamas had only agreed to exchange all the women and children. They said they were done with women and children. There were still some women and children. They're still being held. And Hamas said, hey, how about some of your old men? And the Israelis are like, no, Hamas, we agreed to women and children. Some Israelis now saying, we wish we had taken out some of these old men, maybe said yes at that juncture, despite Hamas officially breaking the agreement. It comes as the ceasefire talks continue. Anthony Blinken still in the region. He met with mediators from Egypt and Qatar on Tuesday as he tries to get a deal here. It's unclear, though, if it's going to happen anytime soon, Jill. And there is some reporting, incidentally, from PBS that Donald Trump, and we haven't confirmed any of this, has spoken to Netanyahu and is like telling him, hold off on a deal until I win. We can secure a better deal together. That, of course, potentially would break U.S. law if that's true. We're seeing denials from the Trump campaign, but that's some of the reporting out there as we continue to monitor the situation.
All right, now to the weather here in the United States from USA Today. After torrential rain led to deadly and destructive flooding across parts of Connecticut and New York, officials on Tuesday continued to assess the damage from this unexpected surge in water. It took the lives of at least 2 people, collapsed homes, and ravaged entire towns. So between Saturday night and Monday morning, parts of Southwest Connecticut received over a foot of rain. Parts of Long Island got just over 10 inches. In several areas, multiple inches fell within a few hours, causing flash floods that quickly transformed roads into powerful rivers that trapped people in their homes and cars. New York State officials say that they're talking about rainfall in some areas in the 1,000-year level, meaning rains like that would happen just once in 1,000 years. The worst impacts were in the town of Oxford, Connecticut, where 2 women were swept away by the rushing floodwaters as crews were trying to rescue them. Their bodies were recovered on Monday.
Yeah, as you talk about once in 1,000-year floods, Jill, with climate change, what was once in 1,000 years became once in 100 years. Soon enough will be once in a decade. These types of extreme weather events. When we talk about instead of global warming, we should really talk about global weirdness. You see these weird, wild, rare events. Up in Connecticut, local officials there described the damage as heartbreaking, gut-wrenching. The governor in Connecticut, Ned Lamont, declared a state of emergency to expedite the recovery efforts there. And they're calling on the federal government to do more to help out. Back in New York, in Suffolk County, up to 10 inches fell over the weekend. That's where major flooding tore apart roads, pushed a dam and a bridge to failure, triggered water rescues, flooded areas around Stony Brook University. That's near you, Jill. You were doing double duty on Tuesday, both for Mo News and your role for Newsday. What was it like covering it?
You know, Moshe, it's so incredibly sad because not only are a handful of residents stranded in their homes because the road to get out of their area was literally washed away. I spoke to another person, half of his house washed away as well. He and his wife left 15 minutes before their home was washed away by the water. Luckily on Long Island, nobody was injured or killed, but you also have all of the wildlife that has been destroyed, like the fish and the turtles. And Moshe, as you pointed out, this was just a rainfall. Yes, as they say, a once in 1,000-year rainfall, which is becoming a lot more frequent. But as we talk about hurricanes and storms getting more severe, it is definitely a wake-up call about our infrastructure and what kind of weather conditions it can actually handle.
Yeah, it was built for regular weather and not for 1 in 1,000-year events, because it's super expensive to build for 1 in 1,000-year events. But as those are becoming more common, we're looking at figuring out new materials and new ways of building to deal with areas that never froze, that are now freezing, areas with extreme heat that were never getting that hot, et cetera, et cetera.
From the Associated Press, this school year, Illinois will become just the 5th state in the country to prohibit corporal punishment in all schools. Legislation that Governor J.B. Pritzker signed into law this month bans physical punishment in private schools while reiterating a prohibition on the practice in public schools that was implemented 30 years ago. So when the ban takes effect in January, Illinois will join New Jersey, Iowa, Maryland, and New York in banning paddling, spanking, or hitting in every school. Much of the world has already banned the practice. The World Health Organization has said the practice of hitting children is, quote, a violation of children's rights to respect for physical integrity and human dignity. In 1990, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child established an obligation to prohibit all corporal punishment of children, and the U.S. was the convention's lone holdout.
Yeah, as far as the world is concerned, there's about 60 countries that still allow it, mainly in underdeveloped places in Africa and Asia. The U.S. and Singapore, the only developed countries in the world that still allow the practice of corporal punishment. Last year in the Senate, you had Dick Durbin, a senator from Illinois, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, get together saying they wanted to ban corporal punishment in any school that receives federal funds. It was assigned to a Senate committee, but that's where it basically died for now. The Supreme Court, by the way, interesting background here, has rejected constitutional claims against the practice. There was actually a case back in 1977 where junior high students in Florida filed a lawsuit saying we should not be subjected to this. This goes against the Eighth Amendment. The Eighth Amendment of the Constitution bans cruel and unusual punishment. The Supreme Court in 77 ruled actually that ban on cruel and unusual punishment only applies to people convicted of crimes. Sorry, kiddos, that's the deal. And so that's effectively allowed corporal punishment to continue in this country. 17 states still allow it in all schools. 4 prohibit it on students with disabilities. Now, we should say, even though it's technically legal in a lot of places, most schools, an estimated 90%, do not use corporal punishment. And some states, by the way, were very early on this. New Jersey banned it back in 1867. Iowa in 89, Maryland and New York stopped it in private schools last year. So the headline struck me, Jill. That's why we included it, because I didn't know that it was still so pervasive in some parts of this country.
From the New York Times, the paper has learned that President Biden approved a highly classified nuclear strategic plan for the United States this spring, and for the first time focusing America's deterrent strategy on China's rapid expansion in its nuclear arsenal. The shift comes as the Pentagon believes that China's nuclear weapons stockpiles will rival the size and diversity of the United States and Russia's over the next decade. The White House never announced that Biden had approved the revised strategy called the Nuclear Employment Guidance. The document is updated every 4 years or so, and it is so highly classified that there are no electronic copies, only a small number of hard copies distributed to a few national security officials and Pentagon commanders. But in recent speeches, 2 senior administration officials were allowed to allude to the change in carefully constrained single sentences.
Yes, it appears here the U.S. wants China to know that it is watching it right now as it expands its nuclear arsenal. Now, for a while, it never felt like it could be possible that multiple adversaries could coordinate the nuclear threats. But we've been talking about this partnership between Russia and China, the deal with North Korea. Iran obviously has been looking at developing nuclear weapons for a long time. And with Russia and China doing military exercises together and potential coordination here with North Korea, this takes on a renewed concern right now. As far as the nuclear arsenal is concerned, right now the Pentagon estimates that China's nuclear force would expand up to 1,000 nuclear weapons by 2030, so in 5 years' time, and then another 500 extra nuclear weapons by the year 2035. That's effectively the numbers that we deploy right now and Russia deploys right now. Beijing apparently is ahead of schedule. There's some satellite data. The New York Times reports that the U.S. has obtained looking at them loading nuclear missiles in the fields. The idea here is not that China would use them necessarily, but it's a deterrent thing, especially as China potentially looks at invading countries like Taiwan. This just reinforces, by the way, as we talk about this election, and we talk about the issues in this election, the unanticipated issues. This could be an anticipated issue. Don Rumsfeld, the former Secretary of Defense under Bush, was known to say there are known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. This would be a known unknown, meaning we know nuclear weapons are a thing. We don't know how that ends, but this is a known unknown that the next commander-in-chief, whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, among the many challenges they'll have to deal with, especially as Putin also, with Ukraine, has alluded to using nukes a couple times and got so concerning at one point in the last couple of years that the U.S. called China and India. They're like, hey, can you call Vlad and tell him to cut it out? That like he can't be thinking about using smaller nuclear weapons in Ukraine. And that conversation actually took place. If you're interested in more of this, a recent podcast I did over on the Mo News interview podcast with Jim Sciutto on Russia and China, we get into this reporting. And it's at times a little scary, but it's an important background as we look at the state of the world right now.
Okay, to some medical news from CNBC. Eli Lilly's highly popular weight loss drug reduced the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 94% in obese or overweight adults with prediabetes, compared with a placebo. So this is according to some initial results from a long-term study released Tuesday. The late-stage trial on tirzepatide, which is the active ingredient in the company's weight loss injection, Zepbound, and the diabetes drug Mounjaro. It also found that patients experienced sustained weight loss over the roughly 3-year treatment period. Adults on the highest weekly dose of the drug saw a 23% decrease in body weight on average after a more than 3-year trial, compared with 2% for those who received a placebo. So the results suggest that Eli Lilly's treatment could meaningfully delay a potential diagnosis for people with prediabetes or those with blood sugar levels that are higher than normal, but not enough to be classified as type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, this is a big deal because more than 1 in 3 Americans have prediabetes, according to the latest government data. Health experts say it can be reversed by lifestyle changes like diet and exercise, always more challenging for people to deal with. Here, you have a potential pill as an option. People who are overweight or have obesity are at higher risk for prediabetes. And these are just the latest headline here when it comes to these GLP-1s, this class of obesity and diabetes drugs like Ozempic and others that we've been talking about for a couple years here. They mimic hormones in the body for the gut to tamp down an appetite and regulate blood sugar. All right, now time for On This Day in History on this August 21st. You ever wonder why the Mona Lisa is famous? On this day in 1911, Da Vinci's Mona Lisa was stolen from the Louvre Museum by 3 Italian handymen. It was not recovered for 2 years until the year 1913, but the media sensation around the stolen painting made it one of the world's most famous paintings. Until then, nobody was really paying attention. Da Vinci, of course, was famous. There was some famous artwork, but the Mona Lisa was sort of an afterthought. Now, you have these crazy lines. They have an entire wing at the Louvre over the Mona Lisa, and it all goes back to this day in 1911 when it was stolen.
So is the moral of the story here, Moshe, for an artist who's looking to make a name for themselves, stage a burglary of your painting?
Listen, it worked in 1911. Just find yourself 3 Italian handymen who are willing to hide the painting for 2 years.
All press is good press.
On this day in 1920, Christopher Robin was born. Recognize that name? The name would be immortalized by his father. Christopher Robin's father was A.A. Milne in his books about Winnie the Pooh. So it turns out that when young Christopher Robin, real-life Christopher Robin, was about 1 year old, he received a stuffed bear as a present. A young Christopher would enjoy his stuffed animals. He had a collection of similar animals, which led Milne to begin writing a series of stories about the toys. And there you have it, Winnie the Pooh, Piglet, Eeyore, etc. Christopher Robin actually lived until 1996, the real Christopher Robin. So we got to see his name and his father's stories really blow up and become famous. Winnie the Pooh.
You're itching for me to say something. I have nothing.
Jill had no reaction to Winnie the Pooh. I was like, you got nothing on Winnie the Pooh? She's just staring at me right now. I was like, all right, whatever. Moving on. On this day in 1959, congrats, Hawaii. You became the 50th state. There's actually a whole history to Hawaii. We have a deep dive on the coup in Hawaii, how the U.S. staged a coup to take it over, the poor queen of Hawaii at that time. It's actually a pretty sad story on Hawaii becomes a state. Anyway, that's all over on our Mo News premium account.
Moshe, I'm just waiting for I carried a watermelon.
Well, let's cue the tape. All right, finally on this day in 1987, 37 years ago today, Dirty Dancing, starring Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey, premiered in theaters.
One of my all-time favorites, Moshe.
All right, we got a few fun facts for everybody. Dirty Dancing. First, it was almost not called Dirty Dancing. The film's title was almost changed to I Was a Teenage Mambo Queen after Dirty Dancing was considered a little risque for the folks at Canada. At the Canadian border, they held it up because they thought it was a porn film, Dirty Dancing. They were like, no, it's not a porn. But they were actually considering changing the name to eliminate confusion to I Was a Teenage Mambo Queen. Fun fact number 2. Patrick Swayze was almost turned down from Dirty Dancing because he had a serious knee injury from his days in Broadway. His resume even read when he applied for the role in Dirty Dancing, no dancing.
Whoops.
Well, he did it. Jennifer Grey was cast as Baby, of course. She carried a watermelon, among other things. Sarah Jessica Parker and Winona Ryder also auditioned for that role.
You know, I actually could see Sarah Jessica Parker in that role, although she, I think, is a trained dancer. So I don't know if she would have been as believable, but I could see her, not as much Winona Ryder.
The scene in which Jennifer Grey keeps laughing as Johnny trails his fingers down her arm was unscripted. And Grey was really ticklish, and Swayze was actually really annoyed about the whole thing. And it turns out to make one of the iconic scenes. And final fun Dirty Dancing fact for all of you. The MGM executive who pitched everyone in Hollywood on Dirty Dancing, it was rejected 43 times. And it finally went into this straight to video. And it finally was accepted by this very small outlet, Vestron. Anyway, one of those fun movie stories where it almost didn't get made because no one thought it would work.
And definitely something to think about if you yourself deal with rejection. Dirty Dancing was rejected 43 times. Right. So keep going, keep pushing.
Yeah. If they keep rejecting you for that job, apply for the job 43 times. if the girl rejects you for the date 43 times, you keep trying. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't work in those contexts. But if at first you don't succeed, try again with an iconic soundtrack from the 1950s and 60s.
No, all right. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We got a lot more in store for you from Chicago this week. So stay tuned to the Insta and this podcast for more.
All right. Bye, everyone.